Oh, there it went. Okay. Had the safety on. Okay. I don't know who all was here. Oh, yeah, sorry. Forget that. I'm not used to having so many things, and I'm kind of a hand gestury guy. So if you weren't here this morning, did kind of a non-technical talk about just kind of like the threats I think that cloud stuff can present, and how a lot of things that we talk about are definitely risks, but they're not really specific to the cloud. They're almost every one of them, you'll also see pop up in locally hosted or your own data center. Okay, so this is just a quick run through if you weren't there. Cloud environments do add risk, but that more comes from the same type of exploits and problems that we already know about. But now you're taking them and putting another web app that you don't control on top of everything else. As far as just the nature of web applications or pretty much any type of software, it's going to have bugs in it. And when you start stacking them on top of each other, you're increasing your risk. If people fix the same old bugs that we're aware of, because honestly, I'd like some new bugs to find, but we just keep sticking with the same old ones and replaying them on new technology. SaaS and framework as a service, they're hard to protect because they allow a lot of customization. One of the big things about, like cross-site scripting, that's somebody trying to get HTML or JavaScript to execute on your site. If you're allowing them to add things, if that's the way it's supposed to work, then how do you really keep the bad code out? Or just the poorly written code? Also, a lot of these services are completely open source or allow demo accounts, things like that. And basically you can go through that stuff. I as an attacker can go through and get a free account. And if you're using a bunch of like well-known APIs, like say like Google Maps or something like that, I can study that part of the source code. If you have a full in-house application, I can't look at your source code. I have to kind of make educated guesses. But when you're relying on these kind of open frameworks, everybody can look at that and therefore see parts of your source code. You can also get a free account and test it, see, find vulnerabilities. And if you rely on the base stuff, more than likely the exploit's going to work on anybody that uses that service. As far as compliancy standards, that's what I kind of discussed earlier is I don't really believe in compliancy. I think as far as the standards, if you follow them, you're probably going to be more secure. But compliancy doesn't really get you out of anything. It's like we got hacked, but we're compliant. So does that get you out of it? Also, and something else to consider is whenever you're giving your data to somebody else, which is basically what you're doing here, there's a lot of agreements and documents that say, oh, well, we're going to take care of this. If you get popped, the media doesn't really care about that agreement. It's going to say you got popped. So where that fault lies, it's kind of something that could be argued, but I think everybody should kind of just do the best they can to secure it. These are essentially a couple of quotes that just kind of made me think of this, and oddly enough, my memory of it was incorrect. I thought it was add another layer of abstraction. When I looked this up when I was putting the slides together, oddly enough in Wikipedia it says commonly misquoted this way. So that's one of the things we're dealing with is every time you just add another layer, you think you're fixing something. Eventually you just get to too many layers, they have problems. Let's see, compliancy issues. These usually have some sort of requirement. If you're using another service, you have to verify that other service is controlled. If you're trusting them with patient data, if you're trusting them with credit card data, they kind of become part of your chain. And if they're dropping the ball, then you are. So just by proxy. An example of this would be like Parature, which is just a common CRM. I use Burp constantly, just doing regular things. I constantly have Burp running and proxying all my connections. Well, I'm just sitting there messing around with Parature one day. All of a sudden, I start seeing these HTTP requests going to a site that, I'm not really familiar with, but it was spellcheck.net. So what was happening inside of this HTTPS secure, ticketing system is that any type of communications that you spell checked, they were passing off over HTTP to spellcheck.net. They weren't using their own service. So therefore, any communications, if it had credit card data, patient data, anything like that, you're just sending it out over HTTP. And of course, that is a threat, but very difficult to exploit. It's one of those kind of like theoretical things. If you could somehow get in between the two of them, and a lot of those types of exploits or vulnerabilities, generally, if you can pull those off, I mean, what's it matter? You can control their DNS or something. You can send everybody where you want. Let's see. When I was setting this up, I went around and basically just looked at a bunch of different services. And this is where the resellers come in. And you don't always know that they're reselling something. They're not always completely obvious about this. When I stumbled across this, it was purely by accident. I was just signing up for as many free services or cheap services as I could find. So I go to this place, flashdrivestorage.com. I set up an account. Well, I get a confirmation email with the password that I put on there. They had very, very little as far as the password complexity. Get my account back or a little confirmation email with the password in it. Then I decide to go check out SoftLayer because they have free cloud storage as well. But they have much more strict password complexity. So I had to create a different password from that than my usual just, repeating the same characters over and over for trash accounts. Basically, when I submitted that, it came back and said, you have an order that's already being processed. Well, I'd never come anywhere near SoftLayer. I was on a completely different site that was offering its own service. But during that setup, since they had more complexity, I had to add different characters and stuff like that. A couple minutes later, I get an email from the original place telling me my account's been provisioned, good to go, but it sends me the password that I tried to create the SoftLayer account with. This is just some kind of weird bugginess between their API or SoftLayer's API and flash drives. There's some kind of timing attack there where if I know your email address and you're setting up an account, I can run over there and basically change your password in SoftLayer before the account's provisioned. Now, this wouldn't really do much. I mean, they're still going to get an email with whatever password it's set to, and that's the moment it's provisioned. So, I mean, split-second timing. Maybe you can get them to not check their email. But really, they're not real attacks. They're in theory, I can say I could do this. But honestly, probably not going to work. But this is the kind of stuff that, inspires confidence. When you start seeing strange behaviors like this, you're just really not sure if you can put your faith in any of it. So as far as the cloud goes from like an attacker point of view, what kind of stuff are we looking at? Well, essentially you end up with a lot of people basically bragging about who their customers are. This happens outside the cloud. Everybody does this. But some of these are really getting out of hand. This is Amazon's. And Salesforce actually has a search engine. You can actually narrow them down by industry, narrow them down by size of company, things like that. And there's some pretty big companies in it. The screenshot's actually from Amazon though. So these are Amazon services, but the Salesforce one is much nicer. So whenever you're dealing with a reseller, just like I was talking in the keynote, you're stacking another web application or API on top of another one, on top of another one. And more than likely, they're going to have bugs in them. And when you're dealing with a reseller, you're not dealing with Amazon anymore, or companies that have the ability to write code securely and have the money to invest into doing it right. So you end up with problems. Okay, this is just a cloud database setup. It's actually a reseller. Essentially gives you the option between it's on a Rackspace server or Amazon. You can set it up for either. But really all you get is database access. You don't really get full-on shell access. They offer like PHP admin to manage things if you're not a fan of the command line. Huge fans of password complexity. I had to kind of improvise this slide, but basically only letters are allowed is the little line there. And luckily I looked up on Wikipedia. There is actually a fear of numbers. So maybe that's the case. I don't know. Probably not. Probably just poor validation. I kind of wanted to see, I was like, well, who says I can't put a single quote in there or something? But that's when you start getting kind of dangerous. So essentially, it lets you set this stuff up really quickly. Works pretty well. I actually kind of like it for testing. So it's kind of a shame I have to kick it. But basically, it does these little AJAX requests constantly. And I realized that the instance ID is the value that it uses everywhere. And I just kept getting this like 2318. Well, then, actually, who all was at my house last night? You too? Okay. Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, all of a sudden. Just increment the number. Well, now it's providing me with your details. I think I was number like 2318. So, and we tried just a couple random numbers, and then I set up another account to get another instance ID that I could kind of control because I didn't want to just mess with random stuff. And yeah, sure enough, I can reset passwords across them. I can just get the information, like if I don't want to go through the trouble of resetting your password or anything like that. So it gives you a lot of options there. Unintended options, but options. And yeah, you could, if you wanted to, you could just basically go in there, just keep incrementing this number and stealing data one after another. But to be fair, I think a lot of people were kind of looking at this a little sketchy because most of the database names that I saw had tests somewhere in the name. So I think people were just signing up these accounts and being like, yeah, no, I'm not going to mess with this. All right, so another interesting thing to attack is CRMs. They store a lot of data. They store in some cases, they store the most important data. They've got all your client contacts, communications, any content that's been exchanged back and forth. Basically, I wouldn't say like, the full keys to the kingdom, like if you cracked Amazon's cloud or something, but it gives you a lot to play with. Especially if you're heavily dependent on this as far as tickets coming in and keeping track of things. Okay, so as far as their CRM service, they also offer Force.com. It's a free account, essentially marketed to developers because they want you to develop more stuff for their cloud service that you can sell and they can provide to customers and things like that. There's some funny things with this though, and this one you do actually have to enable. So this it's pretty commonly enabled, but it's not a default configuration. But it offers this quick create function. It's like if you want all of your people when they're on the phone to make sure they document everything, make sure you got a ticket for this person, make sure you added this contact. That's what this quick create's for. It's just a couple little boxes, name, phone number, email address, that kind of stuff. You just click it and submit it. Well, this is honestly just, I don't know why more people aren't trying this, but I think it was over a year ago, but I was playing around with Facebook, and they use this post form ID. It's their cross-site request forgery prevention. Well, I tried different types of maybe, wildcards, all kinds of different stuff. And then, kind of just out of desperation, I just removed the whole thing, and the request goes through. Okay. Since then, I've tried that quite a few places, because most people look at it and, oh, CSRF token, leave that one alone. Honestly, if you remove them a good deal of the time, especially relating to Ajax stuff, they go right through. Actually, Amazon's got a couple problems with this. eBay has a couple problems with this. Reddit used to, and I wish I would have done something with it because they fixed it now, because I thought it would be hilarious to have like an upvote. Like, post something on there and then everybody that clicks on it upvotes me. But I kind of sat on it too long and it got fixed. So yeah, it helps if you're going to use them, validate it. Make sure that they're actually submitting it. Don't just let it go through without it. So yeah, the quick create will, allow you to cross-site request forgery that. Let's see, it looks like some of I don't know what happened to my slides, but a bunch of them got goofed up. But if you see the confirmation token, that's their version of CSRF protection. Just move it or remove it and you're good to go. You can also just use an auto post script and get somebody to click on it. And I don't know, it's again, not really that malicious, more just annoying. You can kind of flood them with accounts if you wanted to just create thousands of objects that they have to deal with. But I've actually got a trick that'll help you clear those out really fast. Okay. But those aren't really good enough. And everybody wants to see something a little more interesting. Plus, I hate it when people like just speculate about exploits. Oh, well, this could happen. This, maybe, but prove it. So, I want to talk a little bit about same origin policy. I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but this is what keeps Ajax from, when you're on Facebook, from requesting data from Bank of America. Basically, the JavaScript is only allowed to act on the domains that it comes from. Now, if you include it as a script, that's fine, because now you're bringing it into your web page. But if you load up a web page on say Facebook and it tries to make an Ajax request to Wells Fargo, whatever, it's going to prevent that. It's not going to let that happen. And this is also with frames, things like that. You can't just add a frame underneath it and then use your outer JavaScript to query information on that frame, unless they're from the same domain. So, if you're going to talk about Salesforce, I mean, yeah, you can annoy people by adding accounts and stuff, but what you really want to get is the data. You want to gain that information. So, there's a little trick with Salesforce, and actually a lot of ticketing systems kind of have the same issue. Most people use it so that it listens to an email address. Somebody sends an email to that address, it auto creates a ticket. There's a bunch of systems that do that, but Salesforce actually does a pretty good job of handling that stuff. Well, if they have an attachment, hello? All right. So if you have an attachment, what do? All right, well, in Salesforce's case, it takes it and it stores that as well. If you want to view that file, it gives you, you just click on a little link and it'll say, do you want to view this file? You click yes. Well, if it's an image, it just shows up on the page. If it's HTML or JavaScript, it actually renders in that site. So, but this is a little too easy, a little too exciting. To be honest, it actually renders on, instead of salesforce.com, it renders on like d.content.force.com. But that's cool, we can work with that. So another kicker with this kind of attack is that usually with CSRF attacks, You know, oh, I can get somebody to click on it. And I'm sure it's easy to get people to click on stuff all the time. You know, a lot of people out there are just, you know, clicking fools. That's why nobody's ever read a EULA. You just click right through it. But when you start doing this stuff to a ticketing system, they have people sitting there that it's their job to click on your link and fall for your exploit. So it's a little meaner, a little more malicious. Okay, now the internets are a little slow, but we're going to try to do an example of this. Hello. Okay. Okay. Kill that. If he didn't like log me out or anything. Okay. If y'all are familiar with Salesforce, this is pretty much what it looks like. Nothing too fancy. And all this terminal is just a little web server that I have listening on my system. Okay, so just to make fake targets, I've added a couple of these. Let me see. Man, this is kind of hard to do behind me. Okay. I've added these like PD files. And what these PD files are is just they're just text files that say private data 1, private data 2, stuff like that. So let me click these real quick. All right, let's see. That's not that one. All right, now this is the same way that. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now this is just, I just call it reporter, but you know, it doesn't really matter. Okay. This is an attachment that you can send from an email or whatever to Salesforce, and when whoever's looking at the tickets, can everybody still hear me? Try to stay over here. They would load this. Okay, they would look at the attachment that's so important that they see. And when they see this, as you can see, it renders as content.force. So we can't just pull a straight up domain trick on it and say, now I'm part of the same domain. Also, you wouldn't have a button. That kind of gives it away. Now I'm going to try to explain what happens here. We're on force.com, okay? So, and this is, you can see the file download equals file. Well, what happens if you request a file that doesn't exist? You get an error page back, and that's basically your default page you would be seeing when you first log into Salesforce. Well, because it's so Ajax heavy, and this is another thing that makes it really hard to cross-site request forgery, is they use objects for everything. So unless you know those objects, you can't necessarily make changes to them. But because of this bug, it actually sends a 500 error when you do this. I can make an Ajax request to the same site I'm on for a non-existent file. It returns that junk default page to me. Now when it returns that junk default page, I can now I now have those object IDs. And since this is a site that hosts all the files, I can now start requesting those files legitimately because they're all in the same domain. And load the files up, get the data, but what do you do with it at that point? Well, the easiest thing is just to take that data, encode it so it is so it's like URL safe, and then write it back to the page as an image link to another web server. And then when it renders, it's going to make that request and actually send the data from those files to whatever web server you tell it to do.
Data is encoded in the URL?
Yes. You'll see it in just a second. Well, that's one of the reasons I did little teeny ones. But I mean, it would just take a lot more, well, it takes somebody better at JavaScript than me, probably. but it can be done. Hopefully the internets aren't killing me here. I tested this a second ago, but clicked it.
This is only working for people in the support function that click on the link.
I'm sorry?
Does this only work when you for a support request and then they click on the link, or does this work for anybody?
Anybody that uses Salesforce. Let's see. If we get a JavaScript pop-up here in a second, it should be good. Trying to watch burp at the same time to make sure it goes through. Proxy. Okay. Request has been made but not received yet, so. Nothing's like epic fail in front of a bunch of people. Okay, I'm going to try this without the proxy. That might help the situation. Okay. Try this one more time. There we go. Now we got some action. Okay. And this is, again, because I am terrible at JavaScript, I throw these little alerts in here so I know what's happening. Okay. All right, and as you can see, it refreshed the page and loaded. And if we look up here, this is our little web server that was listening. Now you can see that, private data file 1, this is actually the contents of the files. And you can even do this with images. It would be really difficult because you'd have to basically like base 64 encode the binary and then pass it across, and it would be huge. You're correct. And also, I stole the cookie from force.com. So now, if you probably wouldn't do all these attacks at once. You'd probably just gank the cookie and have all the OIDs sent to you. And then you could actually just load that cookie in your browser and take your time, browse them at your leisure. But with this, you can actually see that we're taking the data, the actual text data from the files and moving them over. If you had like a CSV in there, anything like that would be instantly stolen. Yeah, and like I said, since you got the cookies, if you could actually just start guessing them. They're not incremental, but they tend to follow a pretty strict standard where like the first, I think, 13 characters are usually the same. So you could just start, random characters trying with the cookie. With that way, you would actually be able to steal every single file that's stored in Salesforce. Yes, sir. What's up?
So is the cookie not set to HTTP only? Is that why you're able to grab it?
Oh, no. It's actually HTTPS.
No, but I'm saying HTTP only, so it should only go for like browser requests. You shouldn't be able to grab it.
Oh, maybe? Not sure. I'd have to verify that. I didn't care. I got the cookie. It's hard to really work that hard on stuff when you've already achieved the goal. Okay, so that is basically, you could send this email to anybody that uses Salesforce, and now you've just stolen, which I've got this limited to like just 3, but you've now stolen every file they have stored there. Now, if you want to be a real jerk, and I do, what you can go for is, this is a hoot. If y'all were looking when I was kind of going through these, it disappeared on me. Oh no, there it is. I have one named Destroyer. This is because to delete something in Salesforce, all you have to do is a GET request and give it the OID. Now see, oh yes. The kicker, the thing that kind of cripples this exploit a little bit, the one I just showed you, is you're limited to documents that are uploaded. You can't actually steal like, account information, things like that. But when we get that error page, we're actually getting a lot more OIDs than just the files that are stored there. And because the delete function just really is a GET request with it, I can pretty much do the same trick, grab every available OID, convert them all to image paths, and rewrite that to the screen, and then it makes those requests. When it makes those requests, well, you see how there's several files here. I do have this limited a little bit because I didn't know what would happen if I tried to delete my own OID. And, well, I was a little nervous. I don't like doing live demos, but they're cooler. Okay, so now we're going to do view file on this one. And it's loading. Okay. You see. And while that's happening, I can kind of show you this. Because this is the actual little sneaky request that that creates the error. Let me see here. I hope everybody can somewhat see that. Okay, so I'm just requesting the same, like the file download link, but I'm also requesting, click on that, all right. But I'm also requesting or just a bunch of A's, which is like a non-existent object. So, let's see, request. We're making more requests here. I haven't scrolled down just yet. Okay, you can see this one up here. Okay, so if we look at the response here, you can actually see it did 500 error, which it kind of surprised me because usually for 500 errors you'll get like a vague error message. But if you look through this, every one of those long numbers followed by a couple characters, those are all objects in your Salesforce environment. So all I really have to do is basically just loop through that data and start collecting them, and then make requests that abuse them in some way, shape, or form. Whoops. I got quasar'd or something. Okay, now let's try to request this guy again. Hopefully. Try again. Next time I'll bring a MiFi or something. Okay. Don't you hate it? Okay. There we go. Okay. Now, same deal here. Of course you wouldn't have a button for him to click. But that would be fun, though. You could just put like one click me and see how many people you get. So we're going to click change content. And if the request goes through correctly, then we should start getting pop-ups again. Because, again, back to my terrible JavaScript. There we go. Okay, so basically what it did is it requested that same error page, and I've got it stripping all the recently looked at objects, which were kind of a collection of different files and accounts and stuff like that. I mean, it would have deleted itself probably as well. So let's just reload this page, and we'll see what we got left. Like 30% of my talk is loading. You're a champ. You can do it. Oh, okay. That didn't delete it. Okay. Buggy. Let's try this once more. Yeah, I think about half of my requests are just dropping. So, let's try reloading this whole page. Sorry for all the delays. I didn't expect this to take so long. Am I running out? 5 minutes. Okay, cool. Okay. But basically, what you could do with this is just keep loading these. Okay. Oh, okay. So now it magically worked. Okay, and as you can see, everything's been deleted. Yeah, I think it might have even went a little further and killed this stuff. Okay. But that's not all. I've got more. And luckily it'll fit in 5 minutes. Okay, so let's jump back to my slides real quick here. If I can find them. Okay, slide here. Okay, so if you could see that where it said the record is deleted, what was the little message there? Check the recycle bin. And sure enough, all those files will be in the recycle bin. But this just made me really, really laugh. And actually, those of you all that were at my house last night heard me. This is the only post on the site that doesn't at least fictionally use the CRSF token. It doesn't even try to use it on this. It's a GET request. And I mean, and it can be loaded as an image. So really, you could just litter that, a image source to this all over the internet. And anybody logged into Salesforce will be clearing out their recycle bin. And also, the 2 means dump everything in my corporate group. If you do 1, it just does your own. So, if you want to play with that, have fun. Okay, do you have any questions? I think we got like a couple minutes.